Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Pick and Pop podcast. As always, I am your host, Colby Giacubeno, joined by my co-host, Brett Roberts. And today we bring you another guest, our second one since this podcast came in. And we have Maxwell Ogden from the Daily Knicks. He also does some editing for, I believe it's Wildcat Nation, Blue Nation for FanSided, and then he also is a national lead NBA contributor for HoopsHabit. Max, thanks a lot for joining us today.
Thank you for having me on.
No problem, man. So, like we did with our first guest, I just want to, we're going to take a step back and kind of let you tell the folks a little bit about yourself. Obviously, you're involved in a lot of different writing. Before you joined FanSided, you were on, Bleacher Report doing some interviews with some players and everything like that. I always, talk to you about how you're a machine, because it seems like, you just always have some kind of big article coming out with, a lot of great information. I really enjoy your writing. So, like I said, I'll take a step back and you just kind of tell us how you developed this passion for writing and how you got where you are today.
Max and I go way back, way back.
Writing just kind of fell into my lap more or less. I've been a basketball my whole life. I think the first time I ever fell in love with basketball was when Rip Hamilton and Khalid El-Amin were at UConn, and they went to the national championship. And just the idea of a true team sport where one guy really can dominate, like that to me is why it's so absurd when people go, rings don't matter. Well, championship teams that didn't have a genuine superstar, I'll concede. But you can't, because that doesn't happen. So I fell in love with that. And, when I saw Dwayne Wade on Marquette get to the Final Four, that just kind of solidified it for me. And then, writing is just something that I'm fortunate to have had. I was going to college for something that I didn't really want to do, political science. And, I started bartending because who doesn't want $150 a night? And,
that's an awesome job. I always thought about wanting to do that myself, actually.
It's fun, but it's, staying up till 4 a.m. And then one of my friends told me that he got a job over at Bleacher Report. And this is before they were the giant that they are today. They were still coming up, but,
I was there with you. I was there with you in those early days.
Yeah, and getting a job there was all really a matter of work ethic. And I just, when I wasn't bartender, I got brought on for a full-time position, and that kind of just set everything in motion. And when that path ended, I was fortunate enough to know Michael Dunlap, and he brought me over to HoopsHabit, and I guess the rest is history. I'm blessed to be able to cover a team now because it gives you a different perspective on the NBA. It gives you a perspective of, okay, now you know the inner workings of a team. Now you know everything about it that you probably wouldn't have known without doing the research that I've had to do. Like, you can read as many books and articles as you want, but when you're really in the thick of things, it gives you an entirely new perspective on the game.
Now, Max, I got to ask you something. Daily Knicks, I noticed we got our weekly traffic reports, not to toot our own horns or whatever, but your site consistently was number one by a large margin often. And sometimes you had articles that could only be called viral. So what were you really, do you think you brought to that site that made it basically the most successful fan-sided site?
To me, there's the structure. A lot of people don't like slideshows, but the people who complain, you can't pay mind to that because there are far more people who do than people who don't. And if that weren't true, then we wouldn't be generating the traffic we do with slideshows. The beauty of it's easier to read. Clicking through things, God forbid you have to use your fingers, but you can get a lot of information into an article without having it be a pain in the butt to read. So, doing slideshows is great, but the reality is in New York specifically, but really any team, it's people want to know what's next, especially the fact that the Knicks haven't made the playoffs in 3 straight years is kind of, that should have been, the nail in the coffin. But you're talking about a team that if somebody's available in a trade or in free agency, Knicks fans want to know, how realistic is it that we could get this guy? And, we're not the Lakers. We don't sign everybody and their mother, but we've done enough where, you know what, we're in New York. We know how appealing this market is. Let's cover basically anything of validity. Don't go after some website that nobody's ever heard of, but you trust, then yeah, you kind of have an obligation to tell the people who follow your site about what's happening.
Yeah, I feel like. Sorry, Colby. Sorry.
I agree with that, Max. And one thing that I really, I would like to commend you on is when you do make an article, because we see, here and there for some sites, just kind of clickbait stuff. So say for a Cavaliers, 5 destinations that LeBron might land. Like, that's not a realistic topic. You take certain subjects, even if it's that guy that's 12th, 13th man in the rotation, and you dedicate 1,000+ words to him on where he might land, or why why the Knicks picked him up and why he'll be valuable. So it's a lot of good information, realistic information, obviously not just clickbait. And I think that's a really big reason why the Daily Knicks has blown up like it has. And then, like you said, going back to actually covering a team, it's crazy when I think back. Before I started covering the Wizards, my opinions of them and just the organization as a whole were just, they couldn't have been more far off until I finally went and finally saw how the operations worked, how the team really, got along, because it's crazy. That's I think that was one of my big learning lessons in this journalism journey is a player will say, a quote consisting of 200 words, but 20 of them can come off as negative, and that's what some of these writers will use and focus on. And that's not what that player was, trying to depict. So I think what you do, how you handle it. I know you covered an event over the summer with guys, I think, trying to what was it again? Was it a D League type of event, or?
It was the RBA Showcase. It was basically a bunch of well-traveled guys, some fresh out of college. A lot of them, though, had been all over the world, D-League, whichever. And they're just looking for a chance, and they're not straight to the NBA talents, but they're guys with raw potential. They're guys with skill. They're guys with passion. And, that honestly is the beauty of covering the Knicks. If you're talking about basically 29 other teams, there isn't a story consistent with what the Knicks have. So it's like, yeah, you're in New York, you expect the big name. But John Starks made the roster because he sprained his ankle, or twisted, whichever, during training camp, and they couldn't cut him because the rule is you can't cut a guy who's injured coming off of training camp at that time. Turns into one of the greatest players in Knicks history. We're the team that called up Jeremy Lin and turned Jeremy Lin into a temporary superstar. We're the team that found Langston Galloway in the D-League, and Langston Galloway has become a very good player. So the beauty of the Knicks is kind of like that showcase unto itself. And that's what I love about it is, we got Amari Stoudemire, but, when we drafted Patrick Ewing, we made the playoffs 13 years in a row. He didn't have a single fellow Hall of Famer on his team. He didn't have a single multi-time All-Star on his team. So when people talk about, the Knicks are the big market, well, it hasn't really been like that since the 70s. We got Bernard King. Yeah, we paired, Earl Monroe with Walt Frazier. But since then, it's been draft or nothing. And I think that's what makes those events so appealing is it's like, look, as a writer for the Knicks, I know for a fact we value the D-League. We value the unsuspecting success story because that's made up most of our success stories.
Yeah, and not only that, you usually get some of your, best interviews at places like that, when you're interviewing guys who are fringe players, just because, they're not going to tell you something, that's politically correct. They're just going to speak from the heart and from their passion of how much they want to make it. I've had my experience with those guys, and the interviews were really enjoyable. It wasn't like, I had to kind of, of course, in a sense, watch what I was saying. I could just ask them pretty much any question, and they were more than happy to answer it. So I definitely enjoyed your work for that showcase. So, but hopping into kind of what the Knicks did, throughout the summer, been hectic. A lot of people have visited it, but of course, since we just started this podcast, we're going to revisit it. Off-season thoughts. I mean, what a lot of moves that were made, a lot of big names that were brought in. People kind of label it as a classic Knicks type of summer, though, bringing in guys that, are big name players, but are kind of on their, downward spiral of their career or have an injury history coming into it. What did you kind of make of it? Was it the offseason that you were hoping for? Just give me your opinion on it.
I mean, I think everybody in every market wants to get the superstar. That if you don't, you're crazy. If you don't want to win a championship, then stop following the NBA. But to preface what I'm about to say, it has to be known and established that Kristaps Porzingis is not our Pau Gasol. He's our Colby or Michael if we're just doing Phil Jackson comparisons. And B, Phil Jackson's vision is to win long term. He said from the start, he wants to build a sustainable contender. So whenever it is that he leaves, he's leaving behind a team that is still good. A team like the 90s Knicks that made those 10-plus playoff appearances in a row. He doesn't want to get something where, oh, yeah, look at that, we won, but now we're going to suck again for another 5 to 6 years. The Knicks have been terrible for the past 15 years. We have 3 winning seasons in 15 years in New York City. That doesn't work. So having said that, this offseason, it was necessary. Derrick Rose and Brandon Jennings are both essentially on one-year deals. We don't know what we're going to get, but if we don't get what we like, goodbye. Noah, yeah, 4 years, that's a little extreme, but Noah isn't being brought in to win Defensive Player of the Year. He's being brought in to create an identity. And the identity that Giacubeno created, and hopefully for the Knicks, and even for the Florida Gators, is you don't quit. It doesn't matter how good your opponent is. You're going to play for 48 minutes, and you're going to bust your behind. And effort wasn't enough to win in Chicago, but that's because Rose got hurt. That team could have won more than they did had they had health. I think the hope in New York is, okay, Noah's going to create that identity, and then Porzingis takes over. And obviously we have Melo, and that's where the offseason really comes together. With Melo, you got to realize this is a 32-year-old star. Superstar, maybe, maybe not. But this is a 3-time Olympic gold medalist. This is a scoring champion. This is a guy with 6 All-NBA appearances. This is a guy going to the Hall of Fame, and he's probably of his prime. Now, Paul Pierce showed that you can win late in your career. Clyde Drexler showed that. So with Phil, I think he realized, look, if we don't win a championship, we don't win a championship, but we need to get to the playoffs. Carmelo can't be sitting outside of the playoffs in his prime. That's not an option. So you bring in these players. Courtney Lee hasn't really stuck anywhere, but his teams always go to the playoffs because he's a 3-and-D player. Noah holds people accountable. Lee holds people accountable. Jennings is hungry, and Rose, the off-the-court issues are becoming a very big distraction, but on the court, yeah, the guy can still create penetration. And if you look at the Knicks last year, Jose Calderon, a rookie Jarian Grant, Langston Galloway, there was no penetration. We were dead last in drives. So while the talent itself may not be appealing, what Phil Jackson did is he added 2 penetrating point guards, a shooting guard who can shoot and create off the bounce, and a center who's going to hold everyone accountable. The Knicks won 32 games with the worst backcourt in the NBA. Even if they're slightly below average, that's a huge upgrade, and that should be at least 10 more wins if Carmelo is the star we think he is.
Yeah, listen, I really like.
Go ahead, Brett.
Courtney Lee's a guy. Courtney Lee's a guy I feel that could have been a star in the NBA had his career taken a different path. His rookie year in Orlando, he was absolutely having a monster series.
Yeah, I mean, he's one of those.
Yeah, I mean, he was on the trajectory, and he was sustained an elbow from Dwight Howard. And now, some guys can wear the mask and not be affected. Other guys wear the mask and they're absolute garbage. He was the latter of those two things. And his career never really recovered from that. He never once again got to that level that he was playing at in that Philadelphia series. 19 points a game for 6 games.
Yeah, I mean, he's always been the epitome of consistency. And that's the thing for the Knicks. We need consistency. Last year, Aaron Aflalo, who a lot of people say, oh, he's kind of the same player. Not really. They do the same things more or less, but Courtney Lee attacks the basket and Aflalo never does. And more important than that, Aflalo just kind of gave up on defense because he's become the kind of player where it's like, all right, I'll play hard defense, but you have to reward me with touches and shots. Lee has always been the kind of player where it's like, no, I just like to defend. And in the modern NBA, that's why there is zone and illegal defense. It's harder to score today. Kind of, but man-to-man defense is nowhere near where it used to be. Hand checking doesn't exist. If you don't think having a hand on somebody the entire time on a possession doesn't help, you're crazy. So to actually have a guy who's going to go out there and defend, that's all you can really ask for from a shooting guard, because that position is probably more dead than center.
And my opinion on Courtney Lee, I mean, of course, people kind of looked at me like I was crazy, but I thought he was their best offseason addition. Just simply, like you said, when I watched Aflalo last year, not only did he want to get rewarded for his, what he did on defense, but it seemed like he always wanted the ball in kind of like the pinch post area or the mid range to try to like do a, like get in like a post up situation like a Colby. And sorry, but you're not that type of player, and you're not going to be treated that way. And another thing with Lee is he's a guy that just understands his role perfectly. And not only that, I feel like he's more efficient from outside than Aflalo. And just simply on driving kicks, stuff like that. Mentioning, going down some of the things, I also like, the addition of Noah. Of course. People question everything the Knicks do just because of the Knicks, like you said. It's constant controversy. They could sign – they could go pick up KD next offseason, and people would somehow explain why it was a bad move for him. It's just what happens. But with Jakeem, I heard a good comparison or a good analogy for him. He's just a culture guy. And he's a guy that right when he steps in the locker room, he changes the whole culture, changes the – perception of the season, the expectations of how hard you should come to work every single day. I mean, I see now that he's kind of battling a hamstring injury, recently, but, there's no doubt that he's the type of guy that even if he's injured, he wants to get his therapy, his work on the court so he can be talking to the guys the entire time. And that's the type of player that they've been missing. So I really think that helped him a lot. Jennings, like you said, I feel like, you can't really lose there. He comes in, has a great year, great. If he doesn't, well, he's gone. The one thing that I was kind of disappointed in that I think they could have been better is letting Galloway go. I really was hoping he would stay just because I liked his fit. I liked his grit that he played with all the time. And then really quick, you mentioned the issues with Derrick Rose. Obviously, a lot of stuff is coming out, publicly with the text messages and stuff. And I was a big D Rose supporter. I still am for the purpose of his basketball playing. But man, it's tough to kind of just push this to the side. It's one of those things where it's hard not to judge him. It's hard not to like kind of not badmouth him, but it's hard to not form a bad opinion based off what this is. Kind of what is the vibe in New York about that? Are people really paying attention to that side? Or are they just kind of turning not a blind eye to it to sound bad, but are they just worried about what he does for them on the basketball court?
I think it's a bit of both. There are a lot of people now who, and myself included, it's hard to support this team knowing what's happening. Now, obviously, I'm not going to, I'll withhold judgment until all of the facts are presented, until a court ruling is decided, yada, yada, yada. Because, text messages can be misleading or they can be telling. We don't know yet. So I'm just going to leave it at that. I think that's what Phil Jackson and the Knicks, we're not the judicial system. We're not the investigators. We'll wait until something is determined before we take action. But there isn't really a precedent for this in the NBA. This isn't the NFL where there's somebody committing a heinous crime every year. The NBA has been relatively low-key on the criminal front. Like Darren Collison committed domestic violence, and that was a shock. In the NFL, that would have been par for the course.
Right.
So for this to happen, I mean, it's tough. It's hard to write about Derrick Rose without thinking about this. It's hard to talk about Derrick Rose without thinking about this because this is a heinous crime. This is disturbing. It's disgusting. And to gloss over it, you can't. So, I mean, Knicks fans are excited for the season because, the sad reality in sports is winning cures everything. But I mean, yeah, it's not something that you just get about and move on.
I feel like in a way, just from the public eye and expectations, they kind of want to exile, Rose right away instead of let the process, take its course, and just let the season come. I mean, there's really nothing like at this point. Yes, everything has been put out in the open. There's also been rumors that the young lady's friend said that she was just out for money. I mean, there's so many different sides until, like you said, they get in front of a judge, all the evidence is brought to the table, and then a verdict is brought clear till you can really form an opinion on the matter. But, the public being the public, especially, I'll keep saying this, like in New York, they want an answer now. They want to condemn somebody now. And that's everybody in sports because everybody, they kind of want to break down players. As bad as it seems, people in America want to build something up and they want to break it down. That's just what happens. And then they're on to building the next thing up. But, I mean, it's a very tough situation. I think Jackson's comments can come off a bit arrogantly because, like you said, he just kind of just dismisses it. But, I mean, in the realistic things, what is he going to say? What is he going to do? He's not going to impede that process at all or speed it up and get an answer for these people. So pretty much you just have to say the politically correct thing and get by it.
Yeah, I mean, his hands are tied. And, I mean, again, look, if Derrick Rose did this, then, me personally, suspension for the season. Whatever that does to the Knicks, suspension for the season. That's not something to be taken lightly. But again, part of the investigative process, all you're doing is evaluating the facts that the media is presenting to you. Now, yeah, there are some things being released from the case. And I will be the first person to say, Derrick Rose does not look good right now. It does not look good. It looks like he did this. But again, until all the facts are gathered, it's like no jury is going to make a decision based on incomplete facts. And because a jury is not going to, neither the Knicks or the public should. If it comes down as this happened or this didn't happen, react. But until that happens, it's just a very difficult situation because you're looking at this team and this player and you're going, I can't support you if this is true.
But you don't really. This is disappointing to me in the fan aspect that we all still have a little bit of in us. Derrick Rose is the very first player I ever spoke to as a reporter. The first guy I ever asked a question to. I mean by that, and he gave a great answer, and I walked away thinking, wow, Derrick Rose is pretty cool. He answered a question that I asked him, and he gave a great response. And here we are 6 years later discussing this. So it really it's depressing from a fan standpoint because these fans get to admire players. Even as reporters, we see players that we walk away liking them. They're likable guys, and then to think that they did this, in contrast to how nice and how likable they are in person, it's a lot of cognitive dissonance. Is the only word for it, really. Yeah,
and I mean, youngest MVP in league history. Most popular player in the league at the time, especially with everyone hating LeBron, that to go from that to this, I mean, it's like Colby all over again. And it sucks.
Yeah, it really is. I wanted to defend Colby too. And I did as much. And I couldn't even print it. It didn't pass the quality standards of Bleacher Report because it was too heavily opinionated. And it's hard not to have an opinion on these things at the same time because Colby talked about the money hungry aspect, and I don't want to judge anyone. That's not my place. I'm not a jury. I'm not a judge, and I'm not a judge of people. But it's an ugly situation when these guys have so much to offer financially to someone if that is their motive. In this case, we don't know. So I'm not going to point that finger.
Right. I mean, I don't think it's right to victim shame. I don't think it's right to make a decision without all the the evidence presented. So I mean, at this point, it's just kind of keep an eye on the situation, keep an eye on the case, and made by it go from there. That's all you can really do if you're the NBA or the Knicks. And hopefully there will be a time where every piece of evidence is presented to us so we as a general public can also make our own determination regardless of what the judge says.
Yeah, and I really don't have a doubt that the NBA will handle this correctly. They just, I mean, in my opinion, which, I guess you could call it bias, I think, they are definitely the best league at handling whether it's, social problems, such as protests or off the court matters. I mean, they hand a suspension down. They do it quickly. They have a reasoning for why they got to that amount, of days or games that they suspended that player for. They're very, transparent in their moves, and I don't think you get that from a lot of other professional sports leagues. But kind of, and that situation, like you said, that'll get figured out. It'll be behind us. Whether that means D Rose is playing for the Knicks this year or not, we can't know. We can't tell right now. But the one thing we can do is, judge them off the season, assuming that he will, because as of right now, he's going to suit up and he's going to play. And that's just what it is. So to kind of, get off of that, the negativity, because that's really the only negative cloud that's really surrounding this team right now. We got to go right to the brightest spot, which is Kristaps. He made huge, obviously a huge splash last year in his rookie season. Took over pretty much in the first couple months. He at one point he was kind of the runaway for the rookie of the year, and then that kind of tailed off due to just being on a bad team, expecting a lot out of him, and he still did consistently well throughout the year. I guess, what are your expectations for him this year? Do you expect a huge build off of his rookie season last season, taking into mind you're bringing in a guy like Rose, a ball dominant player, Noah, who is not a ball-dominant player at all. He's actually a facilitator at the center position, but he's still going to have the ball. It's still less possessions for Kristaps if it does go elsewhere. So, what is your insight into what kind of season he's going to
have? The burden on him is going to be he might get less touches. That's certainly a possibility. But if he does, it's going to be more of, okay, when you get the ball now, it's because you're going to score almost directly off of the pass. Now, you might have to make a move, but you're being set up to score. So the burden is now on him where it's like, okay, touches. That's your role, because Carmelo's our number one scorer for now. And rightfully so. Whether people love or hate Melo, you don't get to top 30 all time in scoring by being a slouch. But with Porzingis, it's, I would love to say, yeah, this year he's going to put up 20 and 10, but the numbers don't really matter. So infatuated with statistics, but he's kind of like a modern interpretation of Kevin Garnett. Now, Kevin Garnett never won a scoring title, but anyone who watched him knew he could put up 45 points if he had to. And I think that's going to be the beauty of Porzingis. He's probably not going to win a scoring title. Everybody says Dirk because they're both white, tall, and European. But he doesn't really play a Dirk game. Scoring, maybe. He's very well-rounded. But you're talking about a guy who blocked Tony Parker off the spin cycle. You're talking about a guy who blocked Russell Westbrook on a full-speed drive to the lane layup. I can't remember ever seeing anyone doing those two things, and he did both. Now, obviously, those are individual plays, but you're talking about a 7'3" player with a 7'6" wingspan. That doesn't happen very often. And the nice thing right now is, we saw Ben Simmons get hurt by putting on way too much weight way too quickly. That's not a coincidence. That is a direct result of putting on 33 pounds in about 6 months. You don't do that. And the nice thing with Porzingis is everyone's going, oh, he only gained 1 pound. Well, he did weight distribution. He moved all the weight down to his lower body so he can carry his upper body. When you're that tall, you got to do that. We saw what happened to Yao Ming. We saw at the end of his career what happened to Arvydas Sabonis. So to answer your question, what to expect, I think it's more about improving his efficiency than improving his production. Make the most of your possessions, and most of all, and Phil Jackson touched on this, realize how big you are. Realize that you are 7'3". You realize that nobody in the NBA can block. So take your time. Don't rush your shots, because he did that last year. He was rushing the shots. Set your feet, get into your form, and put the shot up and feel comfortable with it. Go to the post a little more often. Trust yourself. So I think for Knicks fans, what they should be looking for is we just want to see him look more comfortable out there. You know, adjusting to the pace of the NBA, adjusting to an 82-game season is tough. So just if he can go out there and just be more comfortable within his self, the numbers will come, and that the wins hopefully will follow.
What I really see for him as a player is something similar to what Karolinko did his all-star season in Utah. You know, they're very similar players. You know, Porzingis is 5 inches taller than Karolinko, who basically seemed to cover the entire baseline by himself. So to imagine Porzingis unlocking that potential that he has already as that type of defender to get blocks, steals, force a lot of turnovers, deflections, get his hands on balls, and make quick rotations, he could be one of the most impressive defensive players in the league if that's what he sets his mind to doing.
I agree with that. And piggybacking off what Max said, and I want to be very carefully when I say this. In a sense, yes, he'll get less touches, but it's kind of like the Warriors. Please take that lightly, because they aren't a super team like D Rose has said. You know, D Rose has said many questionable things, and that definitely fits that mold. But in the sense that he might not get as many touches, but when he does, he's going to have the chance to have more efficient shots. And that's kind of basic. That's a basic assumption. But I think that will help him a lot, and that'll help him not have to rush his shots. Because last year, I mean, face it, it was either Melo or him. I mean, and teams were forming their defense against that. Nobody else was going to hurt you. Literally, there was nobody else on the floor that was going to hurt you. And then in accordance to the weight thing, I think something that's really overrated is seeing a guy come back with huge arms, huge chest, stuff like that. Like, none of that stuff matters to me. What matters to me is, like you said, his legs and his core. And I actually got this from the True Hoop podcast, just came out. I don't want to take credit for it. Big Waz actually said, look at Zach Randolph. Yes, he looks big. He looks like a big dude. But he has such a low center of gravity, and all his strength is in his core and his legs. So it's so hard, to stay in front of him and body with him when he's got you on the block. And it's not because he's in the gym doing curls and pull-ups. I mean, yeah, I'm sure he does somewhat of that, but it's not like he's coming in with a ripped body, say like a Dwight Howard or how we're seeing Joel Embiid. That's a lot of extra weight to put on your legs if you're not emphasizing the strength in your legs. Like you said, look at Ben Simmons, 33 pounds. Walk around with two 20-pound dumbbells in your hands and walk around, and that's what he was doing. So, I mean, when you say that, trust me, when I was in the locker room last year, after the Knicks played the Wizards, number one, Kristaps looks a lot bigger in real life than he does on the television. Let me tell you that first. Looks a lot taller. But then afterwards, when I say they're feeding this kid, I mean, right after, of course, they're in Washington, so it's not home type of catering. But they had 2 plates of food, got through the scrum and handed to him, and all the guy said was, eat these. And he just looked at him and started eating them. But, I mean, it's not like they're not trying to make him gain weight, but they want to do it in a smart manner. And they're not going to just throw him in the weight room and pound him and pound him and pound him. That's just going to – and especially for a guy his size, it takes one little injury, especially of his lower extremities, and there you go. Like, you can question everything.
Good point. There's 3 players that really, show that. Number one would be Tim Duncan. Now, Karl Malone was a much better athlete than Tim Duncan ever was. But Tim Duncan is a better player because he found a way to do things where it's like, okay, yeah, his game was never flashy, but that makes him greater. The fact that he could do the same things over and over again and dominate, that's a testament to his work ethic and how he polished his skills and his lower body strength to enable him to go to the post as often as he did. So that, to me, is one of the standards. But the other 2 guys, Kevin Garnett never got big. Kevin Garnett was pretty scrawny up top for his entire career, but 21 years later, the guy's a first-ballot Hall of Famer. And the third, just look at LeBron. Yeah, his upper body is pretty impressive, but his entire dominance is built in his lower body. I can't tell you how many times I've seen him come down off of a dunk and gone, you know what, if that were literally any other player in the NBA, they would have sprained their ankle coming down like that. But LeBron's lower body is ridiculous, and that's why he's so dominant. And for a guy like Porzingis, look, if you develop a base and a core, the rest doesn't matter. You could be that scrawny in your arms. I mean, he's not scrawny. He's gotten a lot bigger. But you could be that thin in your arms the rest of your career and still dominate. If you can have your shooting touch, if you can, if you're not going to hurt yourself blocking shots, then, hey, you're ready. And defensively, as Brett said, there isn't a player in the NBA with more upside on defense than Porzingis. That tall, that agile, that coordinated. I'm not sure we've ever seen that from someone that big.
Ralph Sampson. That was it.
Yeah, that's about it. And Jeff Hornacek said it, and people kind of laughed, but it's true. He said, why can't Porzingis be the best player in the league? Why can't the 7'3" Goliath who can drive and put the ball on the floor, who's pulled out dream shakes, who can shoot the three ball, who can do everything, who can defend it and elite level already, top 10 in blocks, top 20 in rim at field goal percentage at the rim as a rookie? And it's like, look, don't put your eggs in the basket of this guy's going to be the best. But if you're a Knicks fan, how can you not be excited? The only hope is that Phil Jackson can help this kid develop in the same way he helped the last two best players in the world develop.
And I liked your comparison. To Kevin Garnett. Because here's my argument behind that. Kevin Garnett was never viewed as the best player in the league, but everybody knew you came to play Minnesota and you played Boston. You were in for, he was obviously one of the best players in the league, but he would never be the best player in the league. Kristaps has the tools to become the best because of all the things he can do more things than Kevin Garnett can. In terms of
utilizing his dribble, and taking his man to the hole really from the perimeter. I don't know if Kevin Garnett could do that unless it was a center that he was matched up against, that was, not as quick as feet as him. But Kristaps can play against those athletic stretch fours and blow by him. I mean, it's crazy. Of course, he utilizes his length, but the things that he can offer at his size, we haven't seen. I'm comfortable with saying we've never seen it. And if he keeps progressing like that, I mean, sky's the limit for this guy.
Right. And, KG got his handles up, and that's kind of what made him an MVP when he won it. 6 assists a game. That's ridiculous. And the nice thing with Porzingis is you can tell, he's not going off to his offseason and just thing. You can tell that the Knicks are communicating with him. No, this is what we need you to work on. This is what we need you to do. So whenever people are talking about, the future of the Knicks is not that light, I don't know what you're talking about. We've got a 21-year-old kid who's as hungry for success as anyone I've ever seen, with an incredible work ethic. Yeah, if our little Noah and Lee and Rose experiment doesn't work out, hey, we've still got a 21-year-old whose upside is – so to me, the talk about the Knicks in the short term, fine. There are obvious reasons for concern, but a healthy Knicks team this year should easily make the playoffs. And long term, if you've already drafted your next franchise player, you're ahead of the curve.
And that was kind of the next thing that I was going to move on to. What is your expectation for considering that they're healthy? That they're healthy. Let's say not like perfect case scenario, but say Noah plays. Let's say Noah plays 65, 70 games. Rose plays same, just to make it easy, 65, 70 games. Where do you have them finishing? What's a hot? I guess what's best case scenario for them wins wise?
I mean, the best case scenario to me, they have the pure talent. If you have a healthy season, you have the pure talent, because we also have to think about Brandon Jennings didn't have an offseason last year. He just had an offseason. Derrick Rose hasn't had a full offseason where he's actually healthy and played the previous season, probably since like 2011-12. Noah, he has the hamstring right now, but Phil Jackson has always been the precautionary guy where it's like, okay, you're a little bit hurt. It's the preseason. Why the heck would I throw you out there? So for me, this team should be able to win 50 games if they're healthy. Best case scenario. Realistically, I think they should be able to get at least 45 wins. I think whatever the standard is for making the playoffs in that 4 to 6 range, they should be in that conversation. If it's 48 wins like it was last year, then hey, you know what? You have a 6-time All-NBA player. You should be able to do this. This is the NBA. It's like I said earlier. Yeah, it's a 5-on-5 game. But this is the only one of the 4 big U.S. sports where one guy can change everything. And, LeBron has dominated the Eastern Conference. Steph Curry changed everything for the Warriors. Now, Melo doesn't have to be a top 5 player, but, last year, a Toronto team that played exclusively out of isolation won 56 games in the Eastern Conference. You can't tell me that team has significantly more talent than the Knicks do this year. They don't. I would argue that they had less talent last year because DeMar Carroll missed 56 games. So to me, it's just, look, Phil Jackson has said don't worry about the win count. I'm not worried about the win count, but to me, get one round of home court advantage in the Eastern Conference because there are a lot of very good teams, but there's only one great team. So your competition is really one great team and some other teams that are basically in the same boat as you. Indiana has a lot of upside, but who knows how well they're going to gel. Toronto, they should be better, but I think all of us expect them to take a step back because it's like, look, you don't play a style that's conducive to success. Boston, yeah, they added Al Horford, but Al Horford has no-showed the playoffs a couple of years in a row, and nobody's talked about it because that team has been a well-oiled machine. I like all these teams. I think they're probably better on paper contenders than the Knicks, but again, Carmelo, realistically, after LeBron, who's the second best player in the Eastern Conference? I bet you they're not a top 10 player in the league. So Paul George, he might be a top 10 player in the league. His shooting percentages were below 40% for some months last year. He's still, he's got a lot, but it's like, again, I know it's FIBA versus the NBA, but Carmelo looked better than Paul George, Jimmy Butler, Kyle Lowry, DeMar DeRozan at the Olympics. So for me, it's like, look, if this is your last hurrah, this is your last season before you and Porzingis kind of level out, do what you got to do. Get this team to 45 to 50 wins and win a playoff series because making the playoffs is nice, and that's an invaluable experience for Porzingis, but this is a veteran team. If you're not thinking championship or bust, don't come to play.
I would say this about teams in the East, man. Like there's a handful, and like you said, well, you know what? I'm going to extend that from 2 to basically like 10. There's a lot of these teams that need one thing to play out in order to be good. And it's not like it's one small thing. Like you said, yes, Boston added Horford. Will they be better than defensively? I'd say yes. But offensively during the regular season, yes. But nobody really knows how that team is going to gel. You just don't. You don't know until the season starts, of course. Toronto, like you said, they missed DeMar Carroll last year. Is he a big difference maker? Yeah, he gets you some wins here and there, but he's not a guy that's going to, DeMar's in the lineup. You guys are going to the Eastern Conference Finals, not something like that. Going down the line, there's teams like, from my backyard, the Wizards. Health is the biggest thing. If one guy goes down in the starting 5, it could open up. And they could have the same exact season that they had last year. Detroit, they're supposed to take the next step. But who knows? They added some new faces. Yes, those faces were on the team second half of last year, but who knows how that carries on into this year? It's a safe opinion from myself that, we have to wait for the season to start. But what I'm saying is there's no the only solid thing that we can say is Cleveland's going to win this conference or should. That they're the strongest team, no matter where they are. Even if they come in 8th going in the playoffs, they're going to win the conference. I think that's pretty, that's pretty safe to say. But these other teams have a lot of stuff riding on them in order to be successful and live up to the expectations that people are putting onto them. So I really liked your insight into that, and that it's going to be. I think with the Knicks, there's a lot of different parts that need to play out. But if they do, they can have a very successful season. Obviously, I think the over/under. I think this was for Vegas, so I don't want to cite the wrong thing, but it's like 38.5, which is kind of I guess, safe in their opinion, and it's just so hard to predict whether or not they can stay healthy. If they can stay healthy, I'm putting money down on that. You know what I mean? That's a safe one to earn some money because I feel like they're a 40-win team at least if they have all of their guys.
I mean, to me, it's also like, don't forget, the past 2 years may have soured some people. 3 years ago, people were talking about Jeff Hornacek as a top 10 coach. And let's really trace this back. In 2013-14, Eric Bledsoe missed almost half the season. And that team won 48 games with again, significantly less talent. Gerald Green was one of their primary scoring options. That's not going to happen in New York. You know, Goran Dragic had a great year, but, you know, Dragic made All-NBA. Maybe he's an all-star level player this year, but he's not an All-NBA guy again. So to me, it's like, okay, he proved he can overachieve. And everyone remembers the second season, the record, but Phoenix was above 500 and in possession of the 8th seed in the Western Conference before they traded 2 of their top 3 players for guys who got hurt as soon as they got there. So it's like, look, Hornacek's a good coach. He's proven that he can turn nothing into something. Now it's just a matter of, okay, can you win with real talent? You should be able to. If you got 48 wins in a tougher conference in the NBA, because let's be real, the Western Conference at that point was brutal. They won 48 games and missed the playoffs. You're not doing that in the Eastern Conference. So, you know, again, I think that there's so much that has to go right. Like, the Knicks don't have a good backup center. Improve it. Kyle O'Quinn was very inconsistent last year. You know, Marshall Plumlee and Willie Hernan-Gomez are both rookies, and Porzingis can situationally play the 5, but you don't really want him there on a full-time basis, specifically against one of the rare centers who actually goes to the post. Like, you don't want Porzingis defending Boogie. So you're right. There's a lot that has to go right, but I've said the same number. If Rose and Noah play 65 to 70 games this year, 45 overall, because in those games, you should be at least 35 and 30. 65 games. You should be 5 games above 500 healthy team. And if you do that, then it's just a matter of going 10 and 7 the rest of the way. The star, the alleged superstar, you got to do that. That's always been the burden in the NBA. If you're a superstar, you win. If you don't win, you're not a superstar. That's why nobody talks about Gilbert Arenas anymore, and everybody still talks about Tony Parker.
Right. That's spot on.
Yeah, and I agree with you. The way that you broke that down is was good, and it's kind of like, why can't they do that? I think the outside perception, which I think the Knicks are a team that have the most known outside perception just because simply they're the Knicks. And what I was going to say was, it sounds doable, but even during that process, people are just going to be sitting here and waiting for it to collapse, waiting for something to go wrong, and waiting for something to, But with their additions, I really think people are going to criticize them. Just to kind of wrap up all this offseason and all this stuff, people are going to criticize their moves. I think when we look at it, maybe even by next year, 2-3 years from now, you can look back at this offseason and say, we made some really, really smart moves. Just simply because of I think the Derrick Rose, Brandon Jennings experiment. I think you really can't go wrong there with those 1-year deals. Noah, yeah, you gave him a little bit of a lengthy contract, but if that guy can get healthy, and not even that, if he's just giving you, at least 20 minutes per game, say in the back end of that contract, having him in the locker room is enough. And once the salary cap takes another boost next summer, his contract's not going to look that bad. So it's that's going to make up for itself as well. Preseason tonight, they play the Rockets, correct?
Yeah.
Going against the Rockets, first preseason game. I mean, we all saw that, the Thunder lost to Real Madrid, and now they're going to go 0-82 this year because of it. I know there's not a whole lot to take away from it, but I'm going to the Wizards Heat game tonight, and it's not really the stars that I'm concerned with. Obviously, it's more of the fringe players, it's more of the role players, it's more of the players coming off the bench to see if they really understand what their role is going to be this year. What are you looking for tonight against the Rockets? What are some things that are on the top of your list just in order of, seeing what gels? Now, with the Knicks, it's different because they have a lot of new stars. So that's something that you could look for. But what are the things on your list?
Right now, it's really just a matter of, as you said, the fringe guys. We need to know, is Justin Holiday going to excel as the backup shooting guard? Everybody said for the past 3 years that this guy can play. It's not some new Knicks thing. People were talking about him when he was on the Warriors. People were talking about him as the next DeMar Carroll when he went to the Atlanta Hawks. A bit when he went to the Bulls. I think he had like 27 points in a game, and it was like, okay, we don't need you to score 27, but can you be the 3-and-D guy that we know you're capable of? So tonight, he throughout the entire preseason and throughout the entire season is going to be the key. Because if he can excel, that gives the Knicks another shooter. Now, Rose isn't a great shooter, but Jennings, Lee, Holiday, Lance Thomas, Melo, and Porzingis. That's 6 above 35% three-point shooters. You can work with that, especially if Rose is willing to kick it out to the perimeter. So Holiday, you got to watch, and then even bigger than Holiday is how will our backup centers play? Is Kyle O'Quinn going to play well? Is Marshall Plumlee going to play well? Is Willie Hernangomez going to play well? Because, as we said, 65 to 70 games would be nice with Noah. But that still leaves you 12 to 17 games where you have somebody else starting at center. And none of those 3 guys have really established themselves. Everybody in New York likes them because they play hard, and that helps. And, Hornacek's system is going to give them a more defined role than what they had last year. They being O'Quinn, but you've got to see how the backups are going to perform, because even though there are questions, we know what to expect from the starters. Let's be real. Rose is still going to give you 16 to 17 points a night. Noah's still going to crash the boards and facilitate. We know. But the backups, our bench is a very big question mark, because Jennings and Thomas New Yorkers are trusting them. We believe that Jennings is going to play well. We believe that Lance Thomas is going to play well. But after that, if you go 7 men deep in the modern NBA, you might as well not have a bench.
Now, on Kyle O'Quinn, when he was in Orlando, he functioned very well in a high post role. Passer, hit cutters very, very well. He'd always pick up at least one really pretty assist a game. Is New York using him enough in that role? I didn't get to watch the Knicks enough.
The last year, not really. Last year, that everyone was how could you fire Derek Fisher? But there really wasn't a system being run. The problem with the player's coach is that when you're too much of a player's coach, you're not really doing anything for the players. You're just a friend. You're a buddy. And, in the worst case scenario, you're sleeping with your player's girlfriend. Good Lord. But this year, Hornacek, that's what he wants to do. He wants to put the big guys in the high post. He wants to run a lot of high screen action. Pick and roll is obviously a big part of his whole career as a coach in Phoenix. He played for Cotton Fitzsimmons. He played for Johnny Orr. He played for Jerry Sloan. Jerry Sloan foremost. Mm-hmm. He's going to run the pick and roll, and that's going to be helpful because we got to get to the basket. The nice thing about that with O'Quinn is that there's a lot of pick and pop. There's a lot of high post action, and it is still the triangle. And, everyone's, the triangle doesn't work. Well, the triangle doesn't work when Jose Calderon is moving at 3 miles an hour to get you into your set. The triangle offense can work if you're moving at a fast pace. The Warriors run some, the Spurs run some. Most teams in the NBA have triangle elements, including the Wizards, including the Magic last year. So the key is going to be with O'Quinn getting him into that high post area because, like you said, he is a great passer. For a big man, he is a great passer. And he could provide some very valuable continuity because that's obviously Noah's primary offensive skill besides rebounding. So if you have 2 great passing big men at center, I think the depth concerns kind of go away. If you're not relying on Noah to score, then you don't really have to worry about, can the backup center maintain that scoring production? Because there is none really to maintain.
Yeah, and real quick, I like the point that you made that most of the NBA teams run the triangle, and that's what people don't understand. I saw the breakdown from Coach Nick at B-Ball Breakdown, and he was kind of just analyzing how, like you said, literally pretty much every single team in the NBA runs some form of the triangle. It's just engraved into the NBA game because of the spacing and the movements. It's all something that can be – I mean, honestly, you could run a set that has no mention of the triangle, and it eventually is. It fits some type of it. So that was something that I thought you brought that was really good. And also – just the pick and rolls, I really do think this team needs to utilize more pick and rolls. When you have Porzingis, like you said, Noah not even being a scoring threat out of him, just pick, pop, and a quick reverse to the other side, just to make the defense move and respect you. And then not to say that that's going to open up so many open shots for the reverse guy in the corner as well, in the opposite corner after Noah reverses it. So there's a lot of different things you can go off that. Hornacek is a proven coach. I think people really just label him off the whole Markieff Morris, all that stuff. I think they just take that one blip and judge his career that, I don't know if the players really like playing for him. No, that's not true. I mean, you ask one guy, two guys, maybe they had a problem with him, but you're going to find that with every single coach. You're not going to find one that every single player likes. So,
I mean, the big thing with Hornacek is, Gerald Green is the guy that people point to. Oh, Gerald Green didn't like him. Well, Jeff Hornacek said, great. Last year, you played at the highest level you've ever played on defense, and I rewarded you with touches, and you had your best year as a scorer. The next year, check the percentages. He declined severely on defense, and that's effort. That's not, you got tougher matchups now. You're guarding the same players. You're not trying as hard, and now you're not getting as many minutes. Nicest thing about Hornacek. Everyone thinks that he's an offensive coach in Phoenix. They were top 20 in defense both of those first 2 years. Now, that's not great, but he didn't really have great defensive personnel. Now he does. So, ideally, you're going to see a Knicks team that is going to be top 15 in offensive and defensive efficiency. And if you have that, then, that's the kind of balance you want. So, again, you mentioned Markieff Morris. If Porzingis is filling that Markieff Morris role, all due respect, I like Markieff Morris's game, but Porzingis is a better player.
Oh, yeah. Oh, for
so
sure.
If you have a better player in that same role, you should get better production. You should get better results. And that, to me, is I don't expect 48 wins. That's not a fair expectation for any team. But you've got to think that with better talent, running a similar system with the friggin' Zen master giving you pointers, to the winningest coach in NBA history giving you some advice, you should be pretty successful.
Yeah, and just to touch on Morris, I mean, I'm a big fan of his, but at the same time, you got to be realistic. And the one thing that the Wizards, that when you watch them is, I like their addition. I like them going out and getting him, but he's just not an efficient outside shooter enough to really be a stretch four. Like when you call a stretch four, he's not. But he is in the sense where he can stretch you out into where 15, 18, 19 feet. But once he gets, 22, 23, he becomes a lot less efficient, a lot less of a threat. Now his athletic ability will certainly help that when he gets the ball, he can take it off the dribble. But with Porzingis, there's no problems with that. He can pop out to 23 and knock it down consistently. He can do the 15 to 20 thing. I mean, we've talked to him about him enough, that he is one of the most young, complete players, and just his size gives him such an advantage already. I think, like I said, man, the Knicks are a tricky team. It wouldn't be right if it wasn't, if it was easy to predict what they could do. That I think something will be wrong there, but I think they're definitely on the right path. I think it'll definitely be an interesting year, not only just on the court, of course, but as we talked about, off the court, seeing how things unfold with D Rose and how this team kind of gels, whether or not they get off to a hot start. Of course, people are talking about that if they don't, maybe Melo requests for a trade midway through the season. That's something to kind of look at. But in my opinion, I don't think they get off to that slow of a start. I mean, Melo's had, faith in this team so far when they won, 17 games, and they had a horrible season the season before as well. I think now that he actually has something to be excited about, he's only going to stay. I think the only reason why he leaves is if he gets, a little bit older and goes and joins a super team just so he can get a ring. But I think Melo's a different type of guy, man. I mean, Of course he wants a championship. At the end of the day, people think he's not a winner. Carmelo is a winner. He is a winner. There's no doubt about that. Would he love to have a championship ring on his resume? Yes. I think he wants to. He's stubborn in the way that he wants to take a path of his own, not do what these other players are doing, and kind of join forces. And also, New York has a special place in his heart, of course. Where he was born. Everything else, there would be no better story for him than to bring a title back to New York. Not only because it's his hometown, but also just because of the sports town that it is. I mean, just imagine the city of that. I don't think we would hear about that, the end of that, for 5 years, even after they didn't win it the year after. I think people would still be celebrating. So, but no, just to kind of wrap this up, man. I want to thank you for your time, all your insight on the Knicks. It's great, guys. If you haven't yet, Knicks fans, if you haven't, which I don't know how. Please go visit dailyknicks.com. Every day you have at least 4 or 5 articles coming your way about whether it's the 15th, the 18th man right now on the roster or the number 1 in Porzingis or Melo. So, Max, real quick, just tell the folks how they can reach you on Twitter, what kind of works you have coming up, whether it's for, the Daily Knicks, HoopsHabit, anything. Just plug what you want to plug.
You guys can follow me at Maxwell Ogden, or you can follow us at Daily Knicks FS. Knicks, we're getting ready for the season. Anything you can think of, we're going to cover it. So please just come by, give us a read, comment on it. We'll be sure to respond to you.
And I really mean that, guys. You got to go take a look at his information on the Knicks. He's going to give you every type of angle. He's not, like I said, it's realistic stuff. Just because, people want to, which I hate. We all talk about this. People want to use the bloggers thing. No, it's not that. We're writing about actually realistic things. And as Max said, he covers the team. So you're not going to get a more, insightful information than his. For Brett, you can reach him at 30.
Max has been around. I've had my eye on Max for 6 years now. We started together, and we were originally the top 2 guys that weren't paid full-time at Bleacher Report. And he got one of those full-time gigs. And Bleacher Report didn't pan out for me in that same respect necessarily. But that was before Bleacher Report was really big. I was doing the Magic, and Max was doing a lot of Knicks stuff. And, to see him still continuing to do great things at Fansided is great, because a lot of people that have that joined at that time have gone on to big things, like Jared Wade was with us then. And others have gone on, like myself, to just kind of turn it into a hobby, And that's a choice everyone has to make at some point. Is this going to provide enough money for life? But some, like Max's site, absolutely murders traffic. So the checks have to be decent, But anyway, Max is an OG. He's observed the game a lot, so I respect his opinion more than a lot of these young guys that come on and don't really know what they're talking about, and they're in abundance. Not that Colby's one. Colby's the young guy that nobody's talking about. Colby's one of the few good young ones, and Shane, and I'm not disrespecting the young cats on the scene. They're needed. But follow me at 33 Trigger. I'm not a very good Twitter follower, to be honest, but I need more followers too. So, and then Colby, I'll let you wrap it up here.
All right, yeah, and then for sure, guys. I mean, be sure to check out Brett's other podcast. His other podcast, I guess, like his other girlfriend, 3 Guard Rotation. No, they got some good stuff coming out there every week. So be sure to tune into that. Really good show, really good panel. And then for me, you can follow me at Colby Giacubeno. As I always say, good luck spelling my last name. And then you can catch my information at today's Fast Break, HoopsHabit. I'm writing for a couple different other sites as well. Have all the Wizards coverage that you need. But until next time on the Pick and Pop podcast, signing off, Colby Giacubeno, Brett Roberts, our guest Maxwell Ogden. We will talk to you soon.
Oh, wait. 1 sec.
Oh,
congratulations on your engagement.
Oh, yeah. Appreciate it. Yeah. I decided to take that next step and put a ring on my girlfriend's finger, one more than Melo has, so she can brag about that. But yeah, no, it was a big step, nerve-wracking moment, but no, definitely glad it's happened. Thanks a lot for the congratulations, man. I appreciate it. All right, guys. Like I said, till next time, we'll have an episode coming your way next week, and I hope you enjoyed it. Please leave comments, leave feedback, bring us questions for the next episode, and until then, we will talk to you later.